Hello everyone, and welcome to Juxtapose. It has been some time from our last episode, but that's because our building was shut down due to a health code violation. But I digress. In the red corner, we have our theatrical stage Centurion, the master of a clap and a half. The morph ball is lame theory by the game Theorists. And in the blue corner, we have the king of cranium, the guy with the weird Undertale skeleton OC. The morph ball is amazing duology by Lockstin of Gnoggin. As always, there is no room for bias in this ring, and scrutiny will be dealt cold to all who enter. And with that said, let's dive right in. Metroid has been an iconic series for many people in their lives, from the early side-scrollers of the past to the 3D immersive titles of the modern millennium. This world full of bounty hunters, aliens, and a whole lot of space exploration is also racked full of mystery as well though. Even while just highlighting the protagonist, there are a slew of uncertainties about her, and the one we'll be highlighting today will be the peculiar morph ball. Now, both theorists analyze this conundrum of a power-up carefully and parallel it to real-world examples and logic, but of course, both are simply theories as well, which can be flawed. If you haven't watched these videos, you should probably do so below in the description, as this video will be analyzing both concepts. Starting off, let's take a trip to MatPat's world. In MatPat's theory, he starts off by winding back the clock and analyzing the earliest Metroid title. He breaks down the sprites based on a pixel basis and compares it to what Nintendo deemed as Samus' height and weight, and then, with ratios, converts this over to real-world measurements. Samus being 32 pixels tall means that each pixel is 2.4 inches, and this puts the morph ball at a height of 2'7". The ball is essentially 41% of her standing height. Matt then states humorously that anyone can fit into a ball of that height by simply curling up, which sorta deems this morph ball as unimpressive on a surface level. This is in reference to the earlier games, and he then transitions over to talk about the 3D titles. In the newer games, Samus simply squats down, rotates around, and the ball clamps down on her. He expounds on this a bit before rewinding to talk about Super Metroid's proportions and how they are more extreme than other titles. The morph ball is more compact as it shaves off about half a foot in diameter. From here on out, MatPat then derives the volume of the morph ball at 8,784 cubic inches. So with this logic in place, Samus must be some sort of contortionist whose ability leans towards forward contorting. MatPat then references Daniel Browning Smith, who is one of the world's best contortionists, who is able to fit into a box that is half the size of the space of what the morph ball requires. So while it's easy for her to fit inside by this logic, it's also unnecessary. MatPat mentions she might as well just crawl around since it's more practical. Last, he discussed that the morph ball is simply an element of bad programming, since back in the day it was difficult to sprite the movement cycle that would be needed for crawling, and thus they just turned her into a ball so they could rotate it. It is simply a relic of the past based not entirely on logic, but because it exists, they have just been rolling with it ever since. Let's hop over to the world of Lockstin now, which has a bit more to cover since it spans across two videos. Lockstin starts off his video by recapping how much is actually stored in Samus' armor, from missiles, bombs, and even generators. He then highlights that one of her most unique abilities is the morph ball, and that this morph ball isn't impractical at all since crawling is clunky, and even more so with tons of armor. But how does she fit into that small ball with all of that armor? Realistically, as Lockstin jokes, this would simply kill her. From here, Lockstin covers dimensions of Samus with ratios similar to how the game Theorists did. When Samus converts to the morph ball, she goes into 25.6 inches of space, which gives us a volume of 8,784 cubic inches. Lockstin then draws parallels to Daniel Browning Smith as well and how he fit into a space less than half the size of the morph ball. So with that in place, just like MatPat depicted, it might not be that impressive as it's something that has been done in real life. However, with the armor factored in, that's an entirely different story. With her thick armor, there would not be much space left at all, especially since certain parts of her armor like the generators would have to stay intact. So it really isn't possible for her to physically fit into the morph ball given the volume of a human body, even if she was just a human pile of goop as he states. Jumping over to the second video, Gnoggin refers to Space Pirate notes from Metroid Prime 2 which state that all attempts to duplicate the morph ball have failed, and have disfigured the subjects badly. While Space Pirates were able to understand the weapon system, they were never able to recreate the morph ball. The Chozo, however, developed this technology, and it seems to be a bridge between science and spirituality. He mentions how the Chozo were able to draw their spirits into our plane of existence to defend the areas they hold dear, and that during their last days, they simply focused on helping other races. One of these races was the humans, as Lockstin points out some of the influence in the art style and levels. Lockstin then parallels the growth of Egypt and the influence the Chozo had over it. It mentions that the gods being bird-like themselves was due to them actually being Chozo. They bestowed spirituality and meditational practices upon the humans. He explains all of this because Samus' suit was built by the Chozo, and this spiritualness is reflected in the state of the suit. When under stress, the suit starts to dissolve into air. The suit can only stay on when her mind is stable, due to requiring intense concentration. Lockstin explains that being raised by the Chozo is what bestowed these characteristics in her. The suit she has channels the spiritual energy that the Chozo were able to manifest, and this is why her suit begins to vanish under certain circumstances involving high stress, similar to the Chozo ghost hopping between dimensions, so to speak. He then parallels this same principle to how the Morph Ball actually works, as it may phase through itself. In Metroid Prime, the Morph Ball can actually be seen through without the indication of Samus still being within. In conclusion, Lockstin explains that her body may be converted into energy and her spirit remains as guidance. Despite the Morph Ball seeming impossible logically, the addition of the spiritual sciences paints the concept completely in a new light. Now obviously both videos take different approaches on the Morph Ball, one remaining based in logic and the physical realm while tapping into developmental roots, while the other expands the concept based on the spiritual realm and its presence in the universe of Metroid. There are a few things worth noting for each video though. For starters, we'll tackle the Game Theorist video. MatPat does make reference to other theories at the start of his video, including Samus converting to plasma, so it's apparent he is aware of these concepts. However, he did choose to remain completely grounded and practical. I think this was a neat angle on the concept, but at the same time, I think all pieces always need to be considered for theory building. One of the biggest issues I see with MatPat's video is the matter of control and what actually happens to Samus within the ball. He states that in the Prime game, Samus basically just gains the ability to somersault, but for some reason, he doesn't mention the flowing energy coming through the ball. It's apparent something odd is going on within it. I think missing or omitting this detail throws the theory for a loop because I honestly feel it is very important. Something definitely happens to Samus within that ball. If she was simply contorted and squished into a small spheric shape, there would be no benefit. Rolling around as a ball would be nauseating, and upon exiting the ball, she would simply topple over from disarray. If you were to roll down a hill in a barrel, you probably would be super dizzy upon exiting. But Samus is as fine as ever. On top of this, she wouldn't be able to navigate at all since her sense of direction would be a spinning vortex. It could be argued that her computer system could help out, which may be valid, but there is also another problem with this. She has the ability to lay bombs. If you are a human pretzel inside of a suit, squeezing a bomb out would be problematic. A further problem becomes where this bomb is actually stored. In the newer games, it appears to be made of energy, but was it always this way? It leaves a lot of unanswered questions. However, at the end, he does state that the Morph Ball was simply created out of laziness due to the developers. So, searching for logic within something that was created illogically is a silly task. So on that front, I don't have any rebuttal for this, because he is correct. On the flip side, let's pop over to Lockstin's analysis. I think abandoning practicality and what I would deem as normal for this power-up makes the most sense. Lockstin does go over similar information that MatPat did, but he did dive deeper into the lore of the game series. Something has to happen to Samus, otherwise this whole concept is just silly. If the birth of the ball is as MatPat stated, then coming up with a concept later on to cover up the past mistake was the only option. However, one thing to note is that the spirits of the Chozo are indeed corrupted by the Phazon of Talon 4 in Metroid Prime. If these spirits are simply the entities of the Chozo, whom ascended, that means the corruption of the Great Poison is able to affect those even who dabble in between dimensions. But it could also be simply that they were driven mad as mortals and then perished. Would their spirits be mad though if they left their poisoned bodies behind? Regardless, being a spirit or an entity of energy may make you more vulnerable in this situation. They say that spirits are typically influenced by the emotions and energy around them. And with this area as radioactive with negative Phazon energy as it is, one may actually be more vulnerable as a spirit or an entity of energy than they would as a physical being. Most creatures die quickly upon contact with Phazon, but humans have some sort of built-up resistance. Given that Samus has Chozo DNA flowing through her veins to some degree, and that humans have a sort of built-up defense, she is kinda in the middle. However, converting to a spirit form would mean your naturally built-up body defenses should rightfully not carry over, as you will simply be energy just like every other spirit in that plane of existence. On that front, what would keep you from being corrupted by this overbearing radiation if it was your genetic makeup that was keeping you safe before? The Morph Ball isn't locked tight, or at least it doesn't appear to be due to the metal not entirely connecting. This radiation would surely permeate quickly, and it makes me wonder what the effect would be. Of course, this is all just speculation, and could also be entirely wrong. It does get you thinking though. Now, while I dabbled a tad conclusively in the last section, there's still more to add to the Morph Ball situation as well. We've discussed two options so far: a person physically conforming to the ball, and a person converting to energy within the ball. I did want to throw one final wrench into the mix though, and add a third option for discussion, and that is the element of teleportation. If Samus is teleported somewhere else, whether a calling point far away or in between dimensions, this might solve a few things, although it is grasping again at hypothetical sciences. This radiant glow we see within the ball could be a constant active portal so Samus can be called back to her present location. Part of my reasoning for putting this option out there is that her weapons have to be coming from somewhere. The missiles in particular are often physical in nature, and due to their size, she should only be able to hold just a few. But she often carries tens, or even hundreds of them. Now obviously, this same argument could be made about Mega Man, and that it is simply game logic. But since we are debating game logic itself with the Morph Ball, this can't be ignored. These have to be stored somewhere. The same could sort of be argued about the Ice Beam as well. Cold things can cause water in the air to freeze or become frigid, but for ice to build up at the rate of what it does with the Ice Beam in the Prime series, you'd almost have to introduce water or a freezing agent itself, otherwise there simply wouldn't be enough. Does all of this technology work the same way the suit phases on and off? If it does, where is it being stored? And also, how does it do this? Is it nanobot based? That's where this whole situation becomes dicey because it can only be reduced down to these questions. But it is also possible that I missed something. There is one last piece of information that neither theorist mentioned that might change how you look at things. And that is this. Yep, that was Samus without her armor morphing into a ball, which actually looks pretty disturbing. Now, while this falls in the wheelhouse of what MatPat mentioned about the developers not creating crawling sprites, it is still something to consider, and I find it odd that it wasn't referenced in any of these videos, especially MatPat's, since it is one of the biggest supporting pieces of evidence for the ball being lame. If you beat Metroid in under 3 hours, you are given the chance to restart the game as armorless Samus, or you can enter an appropriate password as well. With that on the table, now there are tons of things to consider. And that's where you come in. We've covered a lot of ground recapping these two theories and highlighting the potential counterarguments in each. So now it's really up to you to decide which one you like better. Are you a fan of the Morph Ball is lame theory by the Game Theorists? Or perhaps the Morph Ball is amazing theory by Lockstin? Or maybe you are more in line with the teleportation side of things, or have your own theory that is different from all of this. Either way, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. You might even enjoy or hate all these theories evenly. And with that, thanks for tuning in to this spherical analysis of Metroid. If you'd like to join me on my YouTube voyage and continue on our journey to discovering the truth, then the subscribe button is just what you're looking for. Thanks for watching, guys and gals, and until my next video, cheers. You've made it to the end of the video, but wait, your quest isn't over yet. I highly recommend checking out my first Juxtapose on Sans the Skeleton from Undertale. Or if you're interested in some more scientific goodness, why not watch an analysis on how the portal gun works? There's a slew of other videos on my channel too, so regardless, I hope you enjoy.